Brilliant. Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So me and the beautiful Niqabi Diaries thought we would do a little bit of a different video today. I have no idea if it's going to work out. But we wanted to react to a video and then speak about some important topics that we've been wanting to speak about for a while. And inshallah, today we'll get that opportunity. The title of the video is called Do All Women Think the Same? And it's from, I think it's from a channel called Jubilee.
Yes, that's the channel.
I've done a video, reacted to another one of their videos as well. And I don't know if you can see the thumbnail. I'm going to put the thumbnail on screen. It's very interesting. What do you think? Do you think all women think the same?
Oh, I know they don't, because I don't think the same as a lot of women. So, and I'm still a woman, so definitely not.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's funny. I'm pretty sure if we were to ask a man, he probably would say otherwise. Yeah, no, I think it's very obvious that women don't all think the same. I mean, yeah. What do you think of the thumbnail?
The thumbnail, that's one of those. For me, it was very clickbaity, right? Because they've chosen a Muslim girl, a girl that appears to be Muslim, and contrasted her with the, white blonde woman, So
yeah,
it's like it's almost two opposites from the Western perspective,
Yeah, I'm always very suspicious of any thumbnail that's talking about women and then shows a picture of a Muslim woman, because it's always like, okay, we have the normal woman on one side, and then we have the polar opposite, which is the Muslim woman. It's called Spectrum, and there's some lines. Middle line is where they all start from. They'll get asked a question, and then depending on their personal answer, they have a choice of a spectrum of answers going from agree to somewhat agree. I can't remember the
and then all the way to like strongly disagree.
Something like this. And then the opposite of that. So yeah. So we're going to watch each question, and then we're going to give our opinions on the question as well as what we thought of some of the ladies' answers, inshallah. Right? I think I explained that as best as I can at 9 o'clock in the morning. So
I know how to change a tire. 3, 2, 1.
Like, I know like the step 1 through 5, but like to actually do it, I don't think I could like be confident enough to just do it,
Yeah, I didn't know there were 5 steps anyway, so that's why I'm here. Like, no.
I have changed my tire multiple times. That just shows that I'm not a great driver, but I learned myself, and I had to because I popped my tire a lot.
Yeah, first question. Do you know how to change a tire?
I've never changed the tire. In essence, I know how to do it, but I've never done it. I almost did it once, but then somebody just came and did it for me. Because I was actually by myself. I don't know how to change a tire. Yeah, I was by myself. My tire had blown out, and I had taken the spare tire out of the boots and that thingamajig that you use to open the nuts. And I was literally just about to do it. But alhamdulillah, living in Newcastle, and mashallah, I would say that the men there can be very chivalrous. So a guy just came along. He saw I was about to crouch down and do it. And he just came and he's like, oh, I'll do that for you. And he just did it. Alhamdulillah.
This happened in Newcastle?
Yeah, in Newcastle,
yeah. I've never had the opportunity to change a tire. I have popped my tire once recently. Wasn't my fault, of course. It was the curb's fault. But I just called AA. The thing is, I find it really interesting that this question is in this video, though. Like, it's not really about what women think.
It isn't.
This is really about women's abilities. And it's like, we try to say, are we less of a independent woman if we don't know how to change a tyre? Surely it just means that majority of women are good drivers.
Maybe.
No.
But you know, I think
you disagree?
What it is as well, like, I wouldn't say that the majority of women are good drivers, okay? I would say that because the reality is, like, even if there's different reasons why you might need to change your tire. Do you know what I mean? Like, when I needed to change my tire, I actually found that my tire was slashed. That's what happened, and I don't know how that happened. I think, like, it was a really weird situation. I'd been somewhere, got into the car, started driving, and then I was kind of like on the like highway, and then I just heard this weird sound. I was thinking, what is that? Like, I thought something was breaking, and then I realized it was one of the tires. And then when I got out and I had stopped and looked at it, it was literally slashed. And I was just thinking, subhanAllah, how did I even get on the road with this in the first place? Because maybe somebody had cut it, and then it wasn't like, you know, kind of all the way through. But when you drive, then so that's basically what happens. Would be just driving in bad road conditions, for example, you know. That's a problem that we have, like, here in Ghana.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think here, like, literally in Ghana, there's the best drivers in the world, because the roads are in terrible condition, yet people still manage to drive on them. But everybody has to know how to take care of a car really well. So a tire popping it can be quite common, and they just do it. You know, it's not, you know, it's just because the road's really bad.
Yeah.
Nice that she mentioned about her driving, in the sense that I thought, like, you know, if that is her experience, that she feels that, you know, she was being honest. Do you know what I mean? I thought that was nice, because she didn't use the fact that she knows how to change a tire and the other women, a lot of them didn't. She didn't use that as kind of a way to kind of brag, like, oh yeah, I know how to do tires and all women should know how to do tires, kind of thing. She's like, she's learned this because she had to learn it, because that was her experience, you know. So I thought that was quite nice.
The thing is I don't know how to change a tire. Like, I know, but I have never done it. So I don't know. I think it's great to have a skill set in case you ever need it. But I don't think it makes you more of a woman to know how to change a tire, or less of a woman.
Yeah, exactly. I think
not
there's
knowing
certain things, like, for me, like, that's what I'm saying. I like what the girl said. She learned those things out of necessity. Do you know what I mean?
That's the thing. Inshallah, when we're traveling, we do have a mahram, and they should be doing it. You know, like, why would we stress ourselves when they're there? And let them stress over it, inshallah. Okay, should we get to the next question?
Next one. Okay.
Boys and girls should be raised the same way. 3, 2, 1.
There shouldn't be any difference in the fundamental life things that we all should know. And I think that if we were all raised the same, there wouldn't be pay differences. Like, we'd all be on the same slate. So maybe I'll switch it to agree.
I actually don't want kids, but if I were to decide to do that, I would want them to grow up in that environment where there's no difference between you two. You don't have like a curfew that she doesn't have, or vice versa.
I agree with you, but I also think that we have, like, where we are now, we wish there was a perfect world. So we want to raise our kids and say, treat everyone the same. Yes, absolutely, you treat everyone the same, but recognize that not everyone believes that way. Like, if we teach our boys the responsibility, I just think that there's an awareness that you have to teach boys being men and also girls, like, becoming women.
So I agree with the first woman. Like, when it comes to the fundamental principles and values, as Muslims, we all have the same understanding of that. You know, Tawheed, the oneness of God, powers of faith. We have in common, we know in common. But as in raising boys and girls, men and women, they have different roles, they have different things they need to learn, and there's nothing wrong with saying that. I think, these questions are put forward in a way as if they're really, really controversial, and they shouldn't be, because there is clear differences between men and women, and that's absolutely fine. Like, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with saying that. Men need to know how to be men. They need to know the role and the responsibilities that goes the exact same for women. You're trying to be politically correct because people are so sensitive around this subject, but women too are different, and they need to learn things that are just for them. The difference between them physically, they need to know it, and they need to know different things. Women need to understand that them walking outside alone at a time that's not appropriate, they are vulnerable. For a man, they won't be so vulnerable, but they have to teach them the responsibility that comes with looking after the women in their family and things, their duty to their wives, their duty to their children and stuff. So yeah, I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's one of those things, like there's basic life skills. Like, somebody might say, oh, well, when you look at traditional roles, for example, and this is what I think a lot of the West is kind of like, there's agendas to kind of go against men and women having more traditional roles. So the women staying at home, cooking, cleaning, these are the kind of obvious things that you think of. The man, he's like going out to work and to live in, and when he comes home, his meal's already ready, these kind of things. Like, so these are the kind of obvious things that usually people don't like. But I mean, I know that in the culture that I grew up in, it wasn't exactly like that, but that's kind of the principles that I was brought up on at the same time. But my dad used to do housework, for example. He still does housework. He knows how to cook. All the men in my family know how to cook. You know what I mean? So it's not something that, it's like, cooking is a life skill. So there's no reason why a man shouldn't know how to cook. He should, because it's not by default that every man's always going to have a woman around to do these things for him, and he shouldn't expect that, I need that a woman's going to be always available to cook for him, kind of thing. So it makes sense for a man to learn how to cook, because I said it's a life skill. And there's other things, even for a woman as well, like, that you should know how to do, because they can be life skills that's going to be like helpful to you. Do you know what I mean? So, and especially I think in the West, like, you get into a situation where you are a single woman living by yourself, you will need to do certain things that might have been more traditionally the men in your family do those things. So it's just like having the ability. You don't need to be an expert, but that's where I think that people need to, it's just having the knowledge to be able to do the basic life skills, basically. But then, like you said, with the men, they need to learn their role as men. Like, what is it to like be a man, like in Islam as well? Like, what makes a man like a good man? What are the qualities of manhood? And same for the woman, what are the qualities of womanhood as Muslims? And when we look at the differences, there's not like, it's not anything like majorly different. You do have your main functions, but there's flexibility in it as well. So within every household, people will do what naturally is more like their abilities. And it's just like, for example, we have like so many different acts of worship in Islam. You have your 5 pillars, but then with Salah, you have extra prayer that you can do. With fasting, you have the Sunnah fasting that you can do. So there's always something extra that you can do. And for anybody, and according to their abilities, you can add as much of whatever, different act of worship. It suits your capabilities, like what you find easier. You can, do that more. So you can, you've got opportunity to get more rewards. It's just the same thing. Like there's some men, they really love cooking.
I think it's probably just fair to say that there are some differences between men and women. And, when it comes to applying our everyday Islam, there will be slight differences there. And I think it's a shame that even to say this, there'll be so many people like analysing everything we're saying, because they'll be like, you know, looking for the shock factor, but there's no shock factor here. Men and women are different in many ways, and it's not a bad thing. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think when it comes to the fundamentals of life of Islam, it's the same for both men and women.
I just wanted to mention, like you were talking about differences between men and women. Like with Islam, I think one of the main differences with men and women, and some could say it's almost been to some extent almost eradicated in the West, because in Islam, we, you know, the men have certain position, and the position, unlike some people might think that position is there in order to make somebody look good or to give somebody power. But in Islam, power or responsibility or position itself, it comes with responsibility. So the more power you may have, or the you know, more position that you might have, that means you have more responsibility. And the reality is, for every family, the burden of responsibility is on the man. The woman, she's the like second in command, you know. So if there isn't a man around, then obviously then that falls onto the woman, which can be hard as well. But
when you said, you know, comes responsibility, but it also comes accountability.
Exactly.
And a lot of men would argue that that's a lot of pressure, you know, and probably not worth what some people claim that position to have.
Exactly.
And that's a lot of pressure on duty. You know, there's a lot of stuff that could go wrong, and it really takes hard work, dedication, firmness, and commitment to the people involved and to his, you know, his God, you know, his purpose. It's a lot, and I think people underestimate that, and it's such a shame, because it's like everybody moves forward with suspicion and blame, and it's just like, relax, you know, we're all trying to live life, and we live life according to Islam, because, you know, if it's looked at with honesty, it all makes sense. It all falls into place. You know, if you have the leadership position firm and sorted, then everything else underneath usually falls into place. But again, it's on that person to make sure everything is working.
Every woman should be a feminist. 3, 2, 1.
I just think that feminism in recent years have just become extreme.
Well, it's like the 60s. It's like if you're a feminist, then like you're anti-man. Like
why,
what?
Yeah.
Like, you know.
I don't think it should be anti-man. I think we should all be empowering men to support women too.
Right.
And bringing them into the conversation. And I think right now feminism is like, we don't need you, but we do.
I agree with that, but also I think that women have been put down for so long that we kind of need to go a little bit extreme in the opposite direction just so that we can come to the middle, because otherwise the men aren't going to meet us in the middle.
Well, feminism by default is sort of the idea to make decisions for yourself and what fuels you, and telling a woman she should do something is actually anti-feminist. So because we're told all the time from so many people what we should be, how we should act, how we should address, how we should communicate. So the question in itself goes against what I believe as a feminist anyway.
Right. MashaAllah.
So the initial question, should every woman be a feminist?
Well, for me, it's just a no. I hate it.
No.
I really do. You know what it is? It's like, this is what I love about Islam. Islam is the middle way.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the girl, like the tyre girl brought up, is you know, she feels that you have to, that because women have been like, you know, so oppressed for such a long period of time, you know, we have to be so extreme now so men will meet us in the middle. And it's just like, well, actually, love, that is not happening. Men are not meeting us in the middle. What's happened is that the men are just being less of men, because you are taking the responsibility that should be their responsibility and doing it yourself, basically. This is what's happened, you know. So and it's just like we was you know, talking before, this is something, it's like you mentioned accountability and responsibility. You've taken that away from the men now, and they're not going to run after you and take it because like it's a burden. That's the reality. Yeah. Responsibility and accountability is a burden. It's not this. So, and that's something that comes with being the leader. But you know, when women talk about wanting to be in leadership and these kind of things, it's just like, oh, but it's about power. We want to be in control. You know, we want to be independent. But it's just like, well, this comes with responsibility.
Yeah. Well, it does. It either goes, like men either go one way or the other. They either just give up and take a step back, and then that has implications in them individually on the weaker side. Or it's the opposite. You get more toxic masculinity and more firm and hard-hitting misogyny. The history behind feminism, it's really hard to give it in one answer. So, you know, for anybody watching, we need to take that into consideration because some of the history behind feminism is very questionable. But if we just look at the general essence that everybody can kind of understand is that feminism was established to try and, you know, gain the rights of women that they weren't getting in the society that they were living in at that time. Now, alhamdulillah, as Muslims, we've had those rights that they were fighting for since the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know. So we can have empathy with how it initially started because the women weren't getting the rights that they should have done, that Islam would have gave them. So again, there's empathy for how it started, but I mean, since then though, it has turned into evolved into something that's really negative and toxic itself. There is a lot of aspects of it and many people who are very anti-man because of it, and that might be through their experiences, but this is why we as Muslims turn to Islam, because it always brings us back to the balance. You know, women have their rights, but men also have their rights, and both of them have to be upheld for society to work and function and for everybody to have their place and be content and happy. They have to be given the rights that were granted to them by God. And there may be aspects of that either one doesn't like I said earlier on, like men might not be comfortable with all the responsibility that comes with their role, but women too might not be comfortable with all the responsibility that comes with their role. You know, there's definitely aspects of my role that are not always natural, but the point is that whether it's natural or not is something that we have to work on. That will be a part of our test, and it's something that we need to adhere to because it's for our benefit as well as the benefit of the people around us that we do that we uphold that, and we show that, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we're here and we're trying, and you know, and the reason why is because it's better for the family and it's better outwards, you know, for the society.
I'm glad you brought that point up as well, because, you know, what I was thinking as you was talking was, you know, the way feminism is now, it's not even for the benefit of women. It's all about individualism. No. That's really what it is. And, you know, it's a group of women who everything's about what they want, their rights. It's all me. It's you as the individual. You have the right to do this because, this is my choice. It's my body. It's my this. It's my that. Everything is my, me, my. You know, it's just about the individual person. And on the flip side of that, like, you know, when you mentioned as well about men like becoming, you know, the kind of complete opposites of like, you know, like this whole against the feminist movement, so they become maybe even misogynistic and stuff like that. You know, just as women may have been oppressed and definitely have been oppressed in different times and periods throughout history, men have also been oppressed too. So, you know, let's not forget that. So sometimes maybe the reason why these men are misogynist, maybe the reason why they hate women is because they've been mistreated by women. Let's not like
well, look at the red pill agenda. We have to deal with that now, and some of the stuff that comes out of that. We've even got Muslims who are online now, who are taking the red pill agenda and trying to customize it towards Islam, and then putting it out there. And the thing is, as Muslims, we don't rely on man-made movements. We don't seek refuge in these movements. We seek refuge in Allah and the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. If the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't instruct us to approach men in a certain way and to approach women in a certain way, then that means that it's not from Islam, and we need to leave it alone and focus on our deen. We don't have time for this. We don't have time to read up and educate ourselves on movements that are not for us. Spend that time that you're reading and all the books you have, and spend that in the Quran and the Sunnah. Go back to your hadiths. What did your hadiths say? You know, so it's such a shame that even the Muslims even some of the Muslims are getting wrapped up in that. You know, we need to remember who we are and remember that we, alhamdulillah, have been given the honor of having the guidance. So we go back to that. We don't mess around with these movements. We are better than that, and this applies both to men and women.
But you know what, I think that you know, touching on what you said there, I think that part of the reason why these things are happening, like I see this across like in so many different senses. When you talk about Muslims jumping on the bandwagon with different movements, Allah gave us the Quran. It's something that we should be learning all the time, and obviously not just the Quran, but you know, other things as well. But we're always being told to think and to reflect. But I feel that now a lot of Muslims are not doing that. So we wait for, you know, this movement to start here or that movement to start here, and everything is reacting. Even now, we're reacting to a video. Yeah. And why are we reacting to this video? We chose to do that because we know that there's Muslim girls who sit down and watch these kind of videos, and they're getting ideas, and they're thinking, I agree with that. And why is that happening? It's because we haven't been following the Quran and the Sunnah. Muslims are not being brought up to follow the Quran and the Sunnah. This is what's happening. And they don't know how to practically implement it. You know, you can come from a Muslim background, but unfortunately, because the actual Islamic education has not been a priority for Muslims for such a long time, you know, a lot of our cultures, they're not in line with Islamic principles and teachings at all. And then the children, they don't know. So they just take on what is culturally done rather than what is actually Islam. So this is why our young girls, and even the young boys as well, they're getting easily like caught up in these kind of things because they've had experiences themselves in their own families, from their own families, which has made them feel, you know, disadvantaged and underprivileged and oppressed. So they think, well, this makes sense. Look what they're saying. You know, I want to be treated better as a person. I want more independent. I want, you know, and then they're listening to these things, and then they're thinking, well, that's what I want. I'm more like that. And at the extreme end of it, we've got young people leaving Islam. This is how bad it is, you know. SubhanAllah. So it's important, you know, that obviously we talk about these things, but this is the result of, you know, like you said, we're not following the Quran and the Sunnah. You know, the Islam has given us everything, but we don't even know that anymore.
It's a really good point to mention that people leave Islam because of lack of knowledge, not because they have the knowledge. Exactly. Because if they had the knowledge, they wouldn't leave Islam, you know. It's always through that lack of understanding and being wrapped up in the attraction of these man-made agendas, you know. But if you only knew, subhanAllah, your deen and how much it is there to look after you mentally, spiritually, and physically, if you only knew, then you would not even consider. You know, having questions is different from having doubt. And alhamdulillah, we have many amazing scholars out there that people can go to and get the answers to any questions that they have. So I just felt like I really needed to put that out there.
I believe abortion should be legal. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, here we go.
Hi, guys.
I think it's circumstantial because I do believe there are instances where if the mother is going to be severely harmed by a birth, that is where abortion would be okay in my belief. And I think it also, the exception also would be in the cases of rape. But all other circumstances where you made a choice, I'm pro-life. I think we all deserve a chance at life.
So I definitely second that. I agree with that statement, but I feel like the heavy restrictions that are placed on it by our government, just dictating what we can do with our bodies, is really infuriating. And then seeing people who have kids and resent it for the rest of their lives and raising children that they never wanted, it's frustrating.
And so do you think that those parents that are struggling with raising their children, that they didn't have the option for adoption or other ways?
It depends. Like for a lot of cultures, adoption is not okay. So they would not be able to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so the question was
yeah, let's start with the question. So the question was, should abortion be legal? So Islamically speaking, me and you have before we came on the video, we were very conscious that some of the questions have fiqh rules,
of course, yeah,
in them that to speak in detail about. So Islamically, very much like the sister in the grey quote said, you know, it's circumstantial when it comes to the health of the mother. If the life is at risk, then it could be permissible. But, you know, we are very cautious about talking these things because it is on an individual basis. You know, we are very much pro-life, so we don't want to get too much into that. There is plenty of scholars who are able to answer that with knowledge and from the evidence in the Quran and Sunnah. I just want to be, again, putting a disclaimer out there. We don't know how things are edited, so we need to take that into consideration. We need to think the best of our sister. But I didn't like the comment she made about the government, like the government putting restrictions on them and stuff like that.
I didn't know what she meant by that, to be honest with you. I thought that was, I'm not sure what she was referring to, because I thought that these, I don't know, like I was assuming this video is like based on like women living in the West in general anyways. That's what I thought. So I don't know what she meant by government restrictions of what we should do with our bodies, because women are allowed to have abortions in the West. So I don't know what she meant by that.
I think it was the possibility of the government saying otherwise and then having a power over them that they don't have over themselves. I think that is just what I'm getting from what she's saying. At the end of the day, for us as Muslims, we should be looking at the Quran and Sunnah first in these circumstances, and we wouldn't just be permitted to have an abortion. I mean, us ourselves shouldn't be content with that, unless it's for the circumstances that were mentioned before. You know, there's no justification for having it, and this is a life within you that you will be accountable for as well. So, I mean, I think there needs to be recognition for that if we're separating the cases.
Definitely. And I think another issue that needs to be raised here as well is, you know, there's for the reasons which may not be legitimate can still be, you know, they could have come from an illegitimate situation or a legitimate situation. So, for example, in the West, there's women who they're, you know, having relationships outside of marriage, and, you know, when they do end up pregnant, because they feel it doesn't suit them to be pregnant or to have a child, they decide they want to have an abortion. And then you also have women who are married and they get pregnant and they decide they want to have an abortion, you know, because they feel maybe, oh, financially their couple is not stable, whatever reasons it may be. But and that's even a bigger of a problem, because, you know, this is another way that men's rights are being completely violated, because if you make the abortions in that situation legal, the man doesn't have any say, because, oh, it's the woman's body, she's the one who's carrying the baby. But who gave her the baby? Their relationship, they're married. You know, the woman who has a child, for a man, you would expect that the man is going to take responsibility for that child. But then on the flip side, the woman who decides that she just doesn't want to have a kid, the man's got no say in it. But that's his child. So this is something that you mentioned, the red pill before. One of the things that the men are saying now is that they're saying if it's a woman's choice to choose whether she gives birth to a child or not, and the man doesn't have any say in it, then surely a man who didn't want a child, if a woman decides that she's going to have the child, then why should the man take responsibility? That's what's happening now. Because in the US, this is quite a big problem where I didn't know this, but apparently a woman can have a baby and any man that she chooses to write on the birth certificate, he has to automatically pay the child maintenance, even if he's not actually the father, because his name is there, he's liable to pay that.
Wait. Surely he has to put.
Sorry, say that again. The connection just broke a little bit there. Say that again. Sorry.
I'm saying surely he has to put his name on the birth certificate, though. It's not just something she can do.
Apparently not. Apparently not. I don't know. There's this actual show called Paternity Courts. Okay, and this is something that the men have been talking about because it's actually a real thing in America. Yeah. And it's happening. It happens to a lot of guys where a woman she'll put the man's name on the birth certificate, and as long as his name is there, he has to be responsible. And sometimes it's not his kid. It could be that they was married and maybe she, had an illegitimate relationship and the man knows about it. He knows that it's been proved by DNA, for example, that it's not his child. But if his name's there, he still has to pay. So, that's happened quite a lot.
Is all this? How complicated does all this sound though? Like how complicated and disturbing does all this sound? And this is why we need to stay away from this lifestyle. Alhamdulillah, Allah has made it really easy and simple.
What about the rights of the child?
Well, exactly. And
because that's the thing. We can talk about the rights of the women and maybe even the rights of the men, obviously, because, nobody's really, like, that's what the men are starting to bring now with the whole red pill thing. What about the rights of the child? When human beings, adults have decided to become, irresponsible to beyond any bounds, really, because that's everything's about themselves. The next generation, who is caring for them? Who is looking after them? Who's thinking about their futures? Yeah. Who is doing that?
Yeah. It does have a ripple effect, and this is why everything we do is important. And this is why everything we do can impact someone else. This whole, I can do what I want because it doesn't harm anyone else is a farce. It's not true, actually, because what you choose to do as an individual will have a ripple effect on someone else. And this is why we take the rights of ourselves as well as the rights of other people into consideration. And alhamdulillah, this is why Islam is a lifestyle. It is a life system. Islam is a well-oiled machine. Exactly. Every person, every individual has a place and a position and a role. And that role is important for the whole machine to work and run smoothly. Exactly. So there can't be a flaw anywhere, where there are prevention methods if you, for whatever reason, don't want to have kids. But I mean, even saying that sounds so wrong, subhanAllah, but really need to look into the details, the grim details of what things like abortion entails. Fortunately, in some of the places that I know and have lived, there are many young women who have said they have experienced that, and I know some who have experienced it more than once.
Yeah, subhanAllah.
They're not Muslim. So, I mean, it's such a shame. And, and it has affected them. It has had a negative effect on their mental health as well. And some even their physical health. So it's not something that should be taken so lightly.
When you have what they call so-called freedom okay? Because your freedom has taken over any form of common sense. And I say common sense very broadly, okay, because it's not common, right? We just call it common sense, but it ain't common. And on top of that, you know, you, especially as Muslims, because I know Muslim sisters who've had abortions because of these same reasons that we would see women in the West having abortions, because they're not in legitimate, you know, they're not in marriages. I know of Muslim girls who have done that. SubhanAllah, this is happening in our Muslim communities. This is something that is actually happening. So that's why, for me, it's important to talk about these issues, because we cannot sit down as a community and continue to sit down, Quran in our hand, eyes is closed. It's a system, it's a way of life. We cannot see that. You cannot go around with your eyes closed thinking that, you know, your children are just going out to school and mixing with this body and that body and everything's la-di-da and lovely. That's not how life is. We need to touch on the cultural issues as well. When you have parents that have come from other cultures, maybe your parents are they're their first generation in Western countries, and and then they give birth to children who are being born and raised in those Western countries. There is a what do you call it? It's there's a clash there, and a lot of parents, they're not picking up on that. A lot of Muslim parents who are coming from these other backgrounds, a lot of them, I see that they don't even take time to try to understand what their children are saying. When they say certain things, what do they mean? There's, you know, they're going to have a different way of thinking.
I think the thing is, though, to pass on to your children reliance and refuge in Allah is for you to show and display that you're doing that yourself.
Exactly.
You know, so that when any issue that comes across in your family, and we all have certain issues that happens, you know, life is a test. What are you doing in those moments? Are you overreacting? Are you blah, blah, blah? Or are you going to the Quran? Are you going to the Sunnah? Are you looking at answers from a scholar? Are you speaking about, when you do get those answers, are you speaking about the wisdom behind them, why they're important for us? And when it comes to the kids, we need to show and inspire through what we do. Exactly. You know, so we need to show them that we are going back to the religion. We need to show them and teach them the wisdom behind it. Sometimes we as parents, we have a habit of saying, don't do this because we said so, don't do this because it's haram, but then we have no further conversations on it. And although they should listen to us because they're our children, we have to give them understanding. We have to help them understand why. We just assume because we know that they'll know, and that's crazy. It's crazy. We had to be nurtured, we had to be raised. So that's what we need to do for our kids. We need to talk to them and tell them why this is haram. It's haram because, you know, it has an impact on you physically. It has an impact on you spiritually, on you mentally. And we need to show them that actually when we do follow the Quran and Sunnah, that we feel good, that it's better for us than anything that any temporary desire and happiness can give us. You know, it's with experience and the passion and reliance that we show, going back to our deen, that we need to pass on to our kids. And that is just not happening anymore because of, again, when we stray from the Quran and Sunnah and the lifestyle and the system, complications happen. It has a ripple effect on the family and then on the neighbourhood and then on the community. And that's kind of what we're seeing now. So we need to kind of go back. You know, we need to go back and we need to show our kids us going back, and we need to inspire them to go back. We need to inspire them to look at why we do this. It's with our actions as parents, as adults, as leaders of the community, showing and passing on that passion and that beautiful reliance and refuge that we seek in God, that we can only get from God.
You know, another point to mention, like when it comes to the raising of children, and you know, you said about it's not about just telling them do what I say, not as I do. We also need to, at the same time, encourage children to ask questions, because we need to challenge them to think. So sometimes when you're talking to your kids, instead of telling them what they should think, ask them what they think, and then take it from there, because you need to try to understand the thought processes of your child. And by asking them questions about what they think, you're understanding or starting to learn about some of the experiences that they've had, why do they feel a certain way about certain issues as well. This is very important, because, you know, we can say, you know, teach them to rely on Allah, but there has to be, you know, we need practical implementation. So how do you teach your child to rely on Allah? You could say that, oh yeah, well, you know, you could be the mother that they see always praying and fasting and mashallah doing all these things, but for them, they might not be at that level yet. They're unlikely to be at that level yet where they feel that I want to do fasting and praying. And let's get real, like for most children, copying their parents, when they get to certain age, especially teenage years, copying your parents is not fashionable. It just isn't. And even if you in your own home that you have instilled these things in your children, they have a lot of pull from outside as well. So their community, the children that they mix with, who are coming from other homes which could also be dysfunctional, even if they are Muslims, they're having these interactions. So that's going to have effect on them. So it's important to challenge your child on an intellectual level, get them to think, show them the Quran and the Sunnah, but you need to get them to think, ask them questions. Why do you think like that? If this happened to you because you believe that this is okay, then what do you think the repercussions of that are? So you have to be challenging them and letting them, like giving them, like, you know, try to open their eyes before they feel that they need to put themselves in certain situations which are going to be really harmful to them, because they thought that, oh, well, I can do this because I've seen this person do it. Because this happens sometimes, you know.
Yeah, I think we'll probably end this here and we'll put a second half, because that's over an hour now. Mashallah. But I would like to just, and I'll probably point this out in the other video as well, when it comes to things like this, it is about the fiqh rulings. And although me and you have a certain amount of knowledge, we both advise anyone to go to scholars of knowledge, to go back to the sources and the evidences, because we are both human. We are both human. We have the ability to make mistakes, and yeah, some people will just hear that mistake, take it and run with it and use that as justification for doing whatever they want to do. Don't do that. Don't just take from us. We want to be a part of remembrance online and, you know, encouragement of people going back to the Quran and Sunnah. But when it comes to fiqh rulings, people have to go to the people of knowledge. This is part one of this video. I mean, I'm so excited to do the second half. But yeah, if we've said anything wrong, know that it comes from us and our weaknesses as human beings, and anything good is from Allah. And yeah, we'll continue this on the next episode. I'll see you all very soon.
Inshallah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika, la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.